Hi, and welcome to Made for Influence podcast. I'm your host, Juliet Olabanji, and I hope you're doing good. If you're new here, grab a pen, grab a journal, because you're definitely living here with something. And hopefully, you would apply it to your life and you wouldn't just listen to this because this is not just a dose of motivation, it is action packed for you to go implement in your own life. As promised from last week's episode, I am bringing you a way of redefining and reimagining your planning system. So, let's get into today's video. You know what's wild? We've been sold the lie that the right planner will fix everything. That if we just color code hard enough, time block precisely enough, follow the system religiously, we will finally feel in control. And I'm saying this as someone that also have created a planner and I've worked with high achievers and executives. Here's actually what happens for most people. You set up a beautiful planner, you follow it for maybe 3 days and maybe a week. And then life happens. The project moves up and gets in the way. Your energy crashes on a Tuesday afternoon. Maybe someone even needs you in a way you didn't anticipate. And then suddenly, that rigid system you spent hours setting up, it's mocking you from your desk, laughing at you, ahaha, in your face. The problem is we've been trying to force human beings, complex, dynamic, ever-evolving human beings, into systems designed for machines, or into what I like to call an assembly line. I've spent years leading teams, advising executive leadership teams, multi-million dollars transformation, and I've seen it all. I've seen what actually moves the needle when stakes are high and capacity is limited. And what I've learned is this. The planning system that actually works aren't the one that controls you. They're the one that adapt to who you are. So today, we are talking about the planning system that actually works when rigid systems don't. This is what I like to call my identity-based planning. Not another rigid framework, not another productivity hack, but a planning approach that actually works when your brain and your values and your reality aligns. So it works with you and who you are at core. So let's start with traditional planning. Why does traditional planning keeps failing you? Here's what I've noticed from my interaction with teams, women, and people, even myself. Before getting to my framework, most productivity systems are built on massive assumption. They are built on copy and paste. The assumption that you are the same person every single day and that you have the same energy and priorities and the same capacity on a Monday morning as you do on a Friday afternoon. The traditional system based its planning method on the assumption that external circumstances remain constant. And it's absurd. It's crazy when you say it out loud, but that's exactly what rigid planning system requires. They demand consistency in a world where fundamentally it's inconsistent. Our world is inconsistent. As I like to do, let me pull the curtains back and see what's actually going on in your brain when you use a rigid system that doesn't match your reality. Your brain has something called a prediction error response. Essentially, your brain is constantly making predictions about what will happen next. And when it's making this prediction about what will happen next, it's comparing those predictions to reality. So when there's a mismatch, when you plan to work on project A but urgently need to handle project B, your brain experiences that as a threat. It triggers a stress response. Now, I want you to multiply that prediction error by every time you plan your day and your day doesn't match up with your plan. You are essentially bathing your nervous system in low-grade chronic stress. And then we wonder why we feel anxious, why we overthink, why we feel overwhelmed, or why we feel like we are constantly falling behind and failing. The traditional planning system is rigid and it isn't helping you, or matter of fact, is not helping most people that I know. and I've worked with. It is actively working against your neurobiology. But here is the deeper issue. Rigid systems are focused on the what and the when. What am I going to do and when am I going to do it? What task am I completing and when do I need to complete them by? Saying it out loud may not really seem fundamentally wrong, but they are completely disconnected from who you are and why. Who are you? What actually matters to you? Why are you doing any of this in the first place? These three questions propel you towards action and, if executed right, propel your planning system. When your planning system does not reflect your identity, who you actually are and who you're becoming, it will always feel like you're wearing someone else's clothes. Technically functional, but fundamentally wrong. So, what are the alternatives? The alternative is identity-based planning. Identity-based planning starts with a fundamentally different question. Not what do I need to do, but who am I and what does that person, that version of me need? So let me break it down for you practically. Your identity is not just about who you are right now. It is about the person that you're becoming, the woman who leads with calm confidence, or maybe with this fierce confidence, the executive who makes space for strategic decision, the woman taking that transition into a next phase of life, the creator who honors our creative process, the human being who doesn't need to sacrifice our health for our ambition. When you plan from identity, you are asking, what does that woman need from today? What does she need from this week? That completely transforms how you approach planning. It transforms how you approach planning because you are no longer trying to cram as much as you can in as possible. You are curating what belongs. If you look at someone's task or to-do list traditionally, you just see a lot of things trying to fit as much into the day as possible. No, that's doing yourself a disservice. Here's how this practice works with the rooted productivity planner and its system. First, you establish your foundation. This is your non-negotiable identity architecture. In the planner, it comes as your guiding boundaries. Who are you? What matters most? And what are the core pillars of the life that when you neglect this, it causes everything to crumble? So you need a guiding boundary. That's the fundamental. For most women I work with, this includes things like their relationship with God, their virtue, their physical health, their key relationships, their creative capacity, boundaries, their mental clarity. What are those things that when we take them off, everything comes crashing down? Notice that these things are not really tasks. They are identity elements. They are who you are. The second is you plan from energy and your season of life, not the arbitrary time blocks. Your brain doesn't operate in an identical 90-minute focus sessions. Your capacity on a Tuesday morning is different from your capacity on a Wednesday morning. It may be completely different from your capacity on a Thursday afternoon after back-to-back meetings or after running errands, or maybe after waking up as a woman and it's that time of the month. Identity-based planning asks, what is true about my energy right now? In this season of life, maybe. What season am I in? And that's like literally and metaphorically. Am I in a season of expansion? Am I expanding? Or am I in a season of integration? Is this a high capacity week or is it a recovery week? And here's the key. There's no judgment about whatever answer you give in that particular time for the planning that you're doing. It's just reality. And when you plan from reality instead of aspiration, you actually get things done. Gone are the days where I aspire to do so many things and I write it and I end up only crossing off 3 things and I feel bad and I beat myself up. Instead of planning from reality and then predict what I'm able to do from the consistent outputs that I have put in and I've seen results from. The third thing in the identity planning system is that you connect every task to a meaning. Every single thing that you do on your list in your planner exists in service to something larger. When you know why something matters and how it connects to who you are and who you're becoming, your brain stops resisting it. I didn't make it up. This is neuroscience, not theory. Your prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that is responsible for executive function. And it works better when it understands the larger context of things. When you can see how today's task connects to the goal or your quarterly goal, which connects to the year vision that you have. And then that connects ultimately to who you are becoming. Suddenly, you're not contemplating. Suddenly, you have clarity. You have the discipline and motivation to go in that direction. And that is why you're not planning your day in seclusion. You're not just checking off boxes. You're building a life. You don't wake up and say, what do I have to do, in isolation to who you're becoming and the vision that you have. Now, I know you might be thinking, this sounds great, but doesn't flexibility just mean nothing gets done? No. Here's the distinctions. Flexibility without structure is chaos. But structure without flexibility is rigidity. We need both. We need structure, we need flexibility. Identity-based planning gives you the structure of knowing who you are and what matters. That is your anchor. That's what keeps you from floating off into distractions or people-pleasing or constantly shifting priorities based on whoever you spoke to last. It keeps you grounded and focused. But the good thing is, within that structure, you have flexibility in the how and the when. Maybe you plan to work on your presentation on a Monday morning, but you wake up and your creative energy is completely offline. Instead of forcing it and producing mediocre work because you know yourself best, you honor what you're feeling in the moment and you shift to maybe other administrative tasks that requires lesser cognitive load. You trust that you will return to that presentation and your brain is actually going to be ready and available for that level of work. And this is not procrastination. I'm not talking about procrastination at all. It is understanding self-awareness, sophisticated self-awareness. And that is why I love the rooted productivity system and the framework. It's chef's kiss. The rooted productivity planner built this in through what they call the 3-part day. You have your 3 V's, your virtue, your visibility, and your value. But you also have the 3-part day, which are the flexible structures that guide you but don't constrain you. You know your week's priority, you know your identity anchors, you know your guiding boundaries, you know what success look like for this season. And within that framework, you have the permission to respond to reality. What more can the brain ask for? That is the sweet spot for the brain. Because here's what I've learned working with high capacity women. You don't need more discipline. You need more trust in your process. Because here's what I've learned with working with high capacity women. You don't need more discipline. You need more trust. Trust in yourself and trust in your process. Trust that when you are rooted in who you are, the right action will emerge. Let me tell you this today, if this is one thing you take away. The planning system that actually works isn't the most rigid. It is not the most complex. It is not the one with the most rules. It is the one that remembers that you're human and the one that honors your identity, the one that gives you structure and freedom at the same time. Because when you plan from who you are, everything else falls into place. Not rigidly, but authentically to consistently get things done and produce what actually lasts. If you haven't gotten a Rooted Productivity Planner or you haven't heard about Rooted Productivity Planner, I would say you should run and now walk to their website, rootedproductivity.com. Check out their system, beautifully orchestrated planners that serve the purpose it was created for. So if you need a planning system to keep your life at ease when your rigid traditional system doesn't work, go for the Rooted Productivity Planner. That is the end of today's podcast. And I hope that you give yourself grace to be and then do. I am your host, Juliet Olabanji, and you're listening to Made for Influence. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and your streaming platform. Send this to 2 of your friends and tell them to join us next week on Made for Influence podcast. If you want to connect with me, you can reach me through my website at themadeorg.com. You can also message me or DM me on Instagram, Juliet in Frame. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.